الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن سيدنا محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه ومن تبعهم إلى يوم الدين. Inshallah, today we'll go through the Juz 18, and Juz 18 has all Surah Al-Mu'minun and then Surah Al-Nur and then part of Surah Al-Furqan. There are several people have submitted, to me. There is 7 actually have submitted. Hopefully everybody can participate with the 10 verses that they selected. And the red ones is the ones that they matched what I selected. And then the green ones is the one that selected between the different members. There wasn't a lot of verses that they were consistently selecting and I didn't select. I think the maximum was one that 3 of 7 were selecting. But these are, I keep track and hold these things. So inshallah, when we go another round, then we can pick these verses. So whatever you submitted, don't think it's being ignored. It is just, every verse in the Quran, you can study it by itself. So the first one obviously started from Surah Al-Mu'minun, and it started, the first start of it is to define the qualities of true believers or the quality of successful believers. And when you look at it, it really, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us these verses, it's intended that we basically rank ourselves to it and say which one I'm really meet this requirement and which one I'm missing, and therefore work on it. And you notice that in this description, it actually integrates acts of worship with morals and the character behavior and relationship with other people. And the Prophet ﷺ, there is a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ who said, there's 10 verses have been revealed to me today. Whoever established them, whoever acted upon them and adopted them, he will guarantee to enter paradise. So these are verses. So the verses are clear. قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ started with, and then Allah subhanahu talk about those who are reverent in prayer, فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ, and those who turn away from any lagw, any vain talk or vain actions. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ, and those who are active working, actually the ayah does not say those لِلزَّكَاةِ منفقون or pay it, but says فَاعِلُونَ. فَاعِلُونَ, that means you act to actually create enough money to allow you to pay the zakat. So not only to pay enough money to satisfy yourself, but also to fulfill the needs of others too. والذين هم لفروجهم حافظون إلا على أزواجهم أو ملكت أيمانهم فإنهم غير ملومين ومن ابتغى وراء ذلك, those who are chaste, who guard their private parts and so on. والذين هم لأماناتهم وعهدهم راعون, and those who faithfully observe their trust and covenant. And you find out this in many verses in the Quran, emphasize that a believer should be, one whoever, when you say a word, it's 100% guaranteed that he is going to fulfill it. And when we make a promise, he is going to satisfy that promise. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَلَى صَلَوَاتِهِمْ يُحَافِظُونَ, and the prayer get re-emphasized. So the prayer actually sandwiches everything, all of the character, because it is the one that derives the character of the believer. I put red around the lagw, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنِ اللَّغْوِ مُعْرِضُونَ, because often enough, all of us get engaged actually in it, in this lagw. And the lagw, any time you spend the time, any occasion you spend the time, and you come out of that time and you said, what benefit did I gain from it? And you say nothing, then you wasted valuable time. And that would be the lagw. Whatever, something that you read, something you see, something you even talk to people, and so on. So people have to watch for their time in this case. One thing which I thought it would be an interesting, I also put red around this قد أفلح. If you find this word qad, this article qad, and after it a past verb. That means it's guaranteed that this is going to happen. If you find a present tense verb, then in that case, it's doubtful. It can, it may, or it may not. And this is why you find out in other verses, قد أفلح من زكاها. Successful is the one who purified his soul. قد أفلح من تزكى. Emphasize this. So when you look at it, you find out it's emphasis. So when Allah subhanahu قد أفلح المؤمنون means yes, surely, 1,000,000% that the believer successful if they achieve this element that Allah subhanahu have described. The second verse I picked is this: وأنزلنا من السماء ماء بقدر فأسكناه في الأرض وإنا على ذهاب به لقادرون. And the reason I picked it because Allah subhanahu, without water, nobody will survive. And no one controls the water except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that He sent down the sky, the water from the sky, biqadar, that means in a precise measure. And we know that water, although it is essential for our survival, but our too much water is bad and too little water is bad. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decide the exact amount. If too much water, you get the flooding and destruction and so on. And obviously, if too little water, then you get the drought. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, He is the one send the water and send it with quantities that measured properly for the need of the people. Not high, not low. When it becomes in what extremes, that's a form of testing the people and sometimes punishment. Like we know during Sayyidina Nuh, it was just too much water that caused this. And Allah subhanahu also put the same emphasis, وَإِنَّ عَلَى ذَهَابٍ بِهِ لَقَادِرُونَ, that we can take it away. Don't think this is guaranteed for you. It is under my control. And then Allah also said, فَأَسْكَنَّاهُ فِي الْأَرْضِ, even if the water comes in, and if Allah did not have these underground, reservoirs, we wouldn't be able to store it. It will basically go away. And this is so even not only sending the water, but also preserving it for us in these underground reservoirs. And then I said, with the quantities, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, I can take it away also. So don't take it for granted that, rain will come all the time and do this. Then also in another verse that we probably discussed before, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also talk about water. So here is water comes from the rain, goes down, Allah store it in underground reservoirs for humankind, and Allah send it with specific quantities. Here comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala comes and says that He also send, وَأَرْسَلْنَا الرِّيَاحَ لَوَاقِعَ وَأَنزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً, that we send the water from the sky, which is rain, فَأَسْقَيْنَاكُمُوهُ, then we let you drink it, and then وَمَا أَنْتُ لَهُمْ بِخَازِنِينَ, and you cannot store it. So the water, you drink it, you cannot store it. Well, it's not like camels, that can store water. And if you store water, then it's a sickness, it's a disease in that case. But also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَأَسْقَيْنَاكُمُوهُ, we're standing here, sitting and drinking the tea. Look at what happened to you, all of the mechanisms that Allah allowed to work and make it work for you to drink this. If Allah doesn't control it, we all will be dead because we'll all be choking. And if you know somebody who has a stroke, gets stroke, and suddenly that valve that prevents, water, whatever you're going in your mouth, going to the lungs, you know that you have no control on it. Because if they cannot do it, they basically have to open something in the, and put it directly a tube in the stomach because they cannot drink. And we take this for granted. We all do it, and we don't thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for it. He can take it from us also in no time. So our expression actually of gratitude for Allah subhanahu is lacking, frankly. I don't think we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the things that He make it available to us and in us, that if He leave it up to us, none of us will survive. The other verse, maybe it's something that you probably wouldn't pick up, But when I looked to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about him, ثم أرسلنا موسى وأخاه هارون بآياتنا وسلطان إلى فرعون ملأ فاستكبروا. And then in another, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about he sent Moses and his brother Harun with our sign and the clear authority to Pharaoh and his elite group. But they responded with ignorance. And in another ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about a tree, وَشَجَرٌ تَخْرُجْ مِنْ طُورِ Sinai, and you know Sinai is part of Egypt. تنبت بالدهن وصبغ للآكلين. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk about this mount of Sinai when there is a tree there that produces oil that and replenish, the eaters. So I looked at it and I said, out of all of the places that Allah mentioned in the Quran, which one has more mention because a lot of events happen in it? Is it Mecca? Is it Medina? Is it, is it Iraq? Is it where? And you find out Egypt. There is over 500 verses that focus about things that happen in Egypt. And we know why, because it's focused on what? Sayyidina Musa and Sayyidina Yusuf. All of the verses related to them talk about them. So you said, why Egypt? And Egypt actually, because Egypt is a role, from a historical point of view, is a laboratory for all government systems. If you think about it, Egypt was very advanced in the governance of the society. So if you look here and you look absolute central authority represented by Pharaoh, there is administrative elite, that people ruling a class that support him and support the Pharaoh, whatever is corrupt. Already, not Pharaoh, don't look at Pharaoh as individual, but it's just a ruler. The ruler in Egypt, there is people around him who are elite, and basically they said, "Oh, I am your God." They said, "Yes, you are our God." And then there is also a state of economy. They have agriculture and storehouses, and they have abundance and famine that happened to him. And we know the story of Sayyidina Yusuf. They also have classes. They have elite class and they have poor class, or people who servant or slaves, And they have, ideology in the sense that they basically, bring all of the, we bring the, give deity to all kings. Anybody who rule Egypt, somehow we cannot make any mistake. Now in the past, they used to make him God. Now, probably people don't, but treat him as God, in that regard. And they have knowledge system, they have institutions, and they have magic, they have knowledge, they have civilization in that regard. And they also have faced the crisis management, like in the case of Sayyidina Yusuf. And they have civilization transition, like the Exodus, what happened to them, and the collapse of the tyranny and all of that. So you find a lot of things. Actually, Egypt is a good case of a study, for what has happened to humanity, and warning lesson for society that goes up and comes down in that regard. And it shows that without, you can have a lot of power, but without justice, then that power can go away. And the justice and moral restraints can go away. By the way, I was looking if the Imam today read something about Pharaoh is going to ask kids and give them an award. If anybody knows who Pharaoh is, any of you know who's Pharaoh? I mean, he was one in Egypt, a king in Egypt. I tell you something surprising to you, that there is nothing in the Egyptian written history that exists that we will pick, from the walls of the temples and so on, refer to Musa and Pharaoh and Sayyidina Yusuf. So and that's why nobody knows. People say Ramses III or Ramses II or so. Nobody knows, actually this. And maybe when we come to it, we'll discuss why the Egyptian never recorded a big event like this, and where these things happen. But anyway, so it's an interesting one. Well, I'll tell you now, because so you don't have to keep worrying about it. Because the Egyptian never wrote history of somebody who when they were weak. or somebody was defeated, you know. So, and they either fabricated the history of somebody, even if one of the leaders of the kings, you know, because they think that the kings is gods, so if the king defeated, they are going to write something about him. So that's why you find out Sayyidina Yusuf came in as a time when Egypt was occupied. Therefore, do you think the Egyptian will write this part of the history? Recorded, documented? No. And Sayyidina Musa, you know, they were defeated. The army was destroyed, the Pharaoh was killed, and so on. Would you think they will write it? No. So it is not because the event didn't happen, but, and this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provide a lot of details that you can prove it, although the record, the original record doesn't, you know, the historical record and the archaeologists cannot find it. But
Bible mentioned.
Oh, the Bible has a story, obviously, of Prophet Yusuf and Musa, yes, and that's why there's always a conflict between the archaeologists and the religious group, because they said we cannot prove it, from just basically historical archaeology type studies, So, but there is, we'll talk about it when the time will come. One of the issues that most people have problem with is the presence of evil in this world, And the reason why we do it, because we really, we think about this life is, why we are here in earth for 80 years or 90 years or whatever age we have, is still limited time. And this life here is, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala established, at least in our belief, that it is a life of testing. And if being under tested and the trial, you are not going to feel comfortable. Yes, there will be going to be killing, there will be injustice, there will be war, there will be diseases and so on. But all of them to test you. As much as you can get a test for something good, you can also get tested with something bad, in that regard. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a criteria. He said, yes, this life is a test. So every one of us is going to be tested. But the interesting part is that nobody can cheat from the other, cannot take the result of his test, because everybody test is measured according to his capacity. That you will never be tested by a test that you cannot withstand. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا نُكَلِّفُ نَفْسًا إِلَّا وُسْعَهَا وَلَدَيْنَا كِتَابٌ يَنْطِقُ بِالْحَقِّ وَهُمْ لَا يُظْلَمُونَ. That we do not burden any soul beyond its capacity. And with us, there is a record that speaks the truth. We know what the capacity of every individual in that regard. And there is none of them will be wrong. They will never be wrong, but Allah imposing you a test that you cannot handle. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, but the problem is that people is not doing this. The reason is that because people heedless about the whole thing. بل قلوبهم في غمرة من هذا ولهم أعمال من دون ذلك هم لها عاملون. They basically, people are distracted by other things and they are heedless about what is the value of this life. So the reason why people do not withstand and have patience, because of heedlessness or distracted by something else. So it is something that, is so important. But the important, and this is why people sometimes worry about the future. It's like the kids is outside. Well, it shouldn't. Then the wives always will be so concerned. What happened to them? What happened to them? Maybe they went to an accident. I said, well, I can go to sleep. I said, well, if it happened an accident and now I don't know about it, why should worry before it happened? Because when the problem happens, Allah will give you the patience. But if you start worrying about the future before the bad things happen, you are on your own. I mean, you basically created the problem for yourself. Therefore, you just have to always never think about bad things. Always think that's good things. Because when bad things will happen to you, I guarantee you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you the capacity to handle it. And you find these people who have, for example, children who are sick. They have the capacity to do it. You can say, how can they handle it? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them that ability to handle this. So everybody has a capacity of it to do it. Which one? Oh, it's nothing special actually. No, 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 it's not. Well, because remember, sometime when I use this as a book, I sometimes have format, how to write the Arabic and the English, the names of the words and so on. So sometime I picked it from a place when I did the double, basically brackets on it. But now we move to Surah An-Nur. And Surah An-Nur is basically, it established, if you take a study, it's surahs moving in parts to basically to establish the morality on the society in a very clear way, if you interpret it. And therefore Allah started Suratun Anzalnaha wa Faradnaha. That means this surah we send it down and we made it obligatory upon you to apply it. Its rules, it is intended basically because, and Surah An-Nur, because if you apply it, you will have basically light, illuminate your social life, illuminate the society. It brings light from the society, from the darkness, if you apply it. Then, and it also you find out, so it started by what? By basically protection of, basically lineage, honor of people. And therefore, the first one comes in after Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this was some serious legal ruling about, adultery, about, adultery and punishment for adultery. Because when the adultery happened, it actually, it destroys the families. And it brings in confusion in the society, and the immorality becomes so, basically destabilize the families, the lineage. You don't know who is your son, who is the daughter, and so on. You basically got to corrupt the society by this one, if the honor is not preserved. And therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala this start with it. I said, I want to protect the family first. I want to protect the honor of the individual. The lineage of everyone to have been protected. And if anybody violated, then in that case, there will be a severe punishment for it. Now, this punishment, in a lot of these punishment with the hudud that Allah instituted, it is not individually applied. People should not apply it. This is what they call it, it's basically, punishment by the rulers, يقول لك أحكام سلطانية, that the ruler, the sultan is the one to apply it. Because if you come and accuse somebody with this, what's happening? You have no system. You have no judicial system. You have no proof. There is no witnesses. So in that case, this cannot be applied that somebody accuses his family, his member is his family or something, or accuse somebody else and it's easy. No, it is not easy in this case. Now, this ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started, but this ayah that He sent it and obligated. There is nothing in this ayah about the punishment of 100 lashes for the people who commit adultery. Is it married or not married? There's nothing in this. Now, the whole issue becomes in, how about stoning? Is 100, basically lashes is the punishment or stoning? And the record shows that yes, the Prophet ﷺ ordered the stoning. There is no record that shows that the Prophet ﷺ ordered the stoning after this verses ayah we came in through. Because remember, the Prophet ﷺ, even in the Quran, it says that the Torah has hukmullah, the Torah is a ruling of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when the Prophet didn't have any revelation about a ruling, he will apply the ruling of the Torah. And in the Torah, there is a stoning. So yes, could have done. But did the Prophet stone after he got his own command? Because any command that comes in the Quran abrogates all of the commands that happened in previous religion. You cannot apply the rules of the Torah after Islam came. And that's when abrogation happened. All of the rules abrogated. Now it's only the rules of the Quran, the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who have come. And the rules of the Torah is far more severe and harsher than what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have revealed in the Quran. And that's why even the Jews in the Medina, used to come to the Prophet ﷺ to judge by the Quran. And he used to refuse. He said, no, you judge by your own book. You know, I mean, a Muslim gets judged by the Quran. You judge by your own book. And there is one account that one man who was one of the companions, which Abdullah ibn Abi Awfa, he was asked, he said, did the Prophet ﷺ ever order the stoning after this verse? And he said, I don't know. So frankly, in this case, any person, you know, claim that stoning is a legal ruling in Islam, he better come with the proof. Because otherwise, you basically, if you don't, and it has to be unequivocal proof that yes, the Prophet ﷺ implemented a case that came to him after the surah was done, and then he applied stoning on it. If you can't, then this is a valid. Otherwise, basically, you undermine the supremacy of the Quran, of this revelation. So people have to be, you know, unfortunately, in some Muslim countries, they still consider do stoning and do this and apply it by a mob mentalities too. It's not really a ruling on this. So we have to have, and also, one thing also about accusing somebody, the Prophet ﷺ never applied this had in anyone until they come and admit. Because to prove it, it's completely impossible. You know, because it requires basically anybody who accused somebody who's doing it, he have to bring 4 witnesses and 4 trustworthy witnesses. If he bring 2, the 3 of them will be punished. You know, so nobody will dare actually to accuse if he does not. It has to be something like done in open and public and so on, that everybody's watching. And even in this case, who knows what is, you have to also prove, you know, that you know, the honesty and the trustworthiness of the individual. And that is why, because sometimes people come and say, why Muslims do not apply the hudud? You know why that sometimes scholars said, no, you cannot apply the hudud? Because they said, we cannot trust anyone. Because to apply rules of Allah, the severe punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it has to be a trustworthy person. If you don't have a trustworthy person, how are you going to apply? If half of the people cheat, you know, even judges, you know, are corrupt, how can you enforce it, you know, in this regard? So that is one, and something is then interesting, you know, after this, protecting that lineage, comes another command from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect the privacy of your homes. And then comes a second one, يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تدخلوا بيوتا غير بيوتكم حتى تستأنسوا وتسلموا على أهله. Don't just come and knock in the door and then enter the house, you know. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say also, there is an interesting word, خلينا نكمل الآية, that you have don't enter until you enter the home. Do you believe don't enter houses that's not yours, that means it's a friend or even a relative or something, that unless حتى تستأنسوا وتسلموا على, I'm going to use the translation that commonly used. تستأنسوا means seek familiarity with it, you know, but we'll probably need to explain it a little bit. وتسلموا على أهلها, and greet the people in it. ذلكم خير لكم لعلكم تذكرون. And this is, you know, it's good, it's better for you if you just remember. فإن لم تجدوا فيها أحدا فلا تدخلوها حتى يؤذن لكم. Don't now enter in it. وإذا قيل لكم ارجعوا فارجعوا هو أزكى لكم. And when it's told you, you know, that, you know, told you to return, then return, that's purer for you. والله بما تعملون عليم, and Allah is known for what you do. Now this is the last second part, we focus second part. You go in and you knock on the door of a friend or a relative, and he come tell you, well, I'm not ready to meet you now, go, you know, come back. How do you feel? You feel upset with you, you know. So, I mean, it's an interesting, he said, wait a minute, what do you mean, cannot even let me enter for a few minutes and give me a cup of tea or something? You know, and sometimes you might have gone to it by accident, in the sense that maybe there was a meeting at some set a time and you went early, you know, to that meeting. And he said, no, the meeting is tomorrow. And then basically never tell you, come a little bit, let's sit down for a few minutes and so on, your heart will feel uncomfortable. Therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, no, you should return. This is purer for you. This is the best thing for you. So honor this. Now, let's go back to the first one. If they come now, you go knock the door, and now you are going to, the guy is shy from you and will ask you to come in, you know. And here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say until they give you permission. He said, حتى تستأنسوا. تستأنسوا, that means what? That you feel that they feel comfortable with your presence. You feel that they are happy by you there. Not just because, they allowed you to come in, that they are real. You have to ensure that when they allow you to come in, since you didn't come without being invited to that meeting or to the house, you should be sure that they're very comfortable with it, that they are happy to see you. But if you find out, they do it as part of obligation, don't go. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when you, families, houses has to be protected. Privacy has to be protected. Yes, you could be friends, you could be relatives, but everybody has his own house. That is a sanctuary that everybody has. So don't feel that now if they tell you are not ready for you, then you feel upset and mad and said those guys will never to go to them again and so on. You have to really be careful with this one. And frankly, sometimes it happened. It's happened to you. You probably will feel bad, if you come to hit somebody in the door and he doesn't allow you to get in, and he's a good friend of yours, you probably will feel upset. So don't feel upset. That's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, this is purer for you. It's when you do it, you accept it. And this is why the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam also go in this and said, if you go and knock on the door 3 times and nobody answer, go. They might be, you say, well, they are inside. I know the light is there. I can see somebody move. They don't want to answer you. So don't be this way. And we all know this story anyway about it. Somebody came to complain about his wife. His wife was shouting at him. Came Sayyidina Umar to knock on his door, and to complain to his Umar was a Khalifa, so he was the judge. So he wants to complain about his wife. And then he came to Sayyidina Umar, and he heard knocked at the door. But here the shouting is inside. The wife of Sayyidina Umar was shouting against him. So he decided, to go back. And then Sayyidina Umar opened the door after a while and said, why you went back? He said, well, I came to complain you about a problem. You have bigger problem than mine. So just make nothing to do with it. So another one actually is an interesting, if you look, and also because there is also another account about somebody actually came. I think one of the I forgot the details of it, but the gist of it is correct. He came and knocked, maybe in Sayyidina Umar or something, that knocked 3 times, or another Khalifa did. And he did, and then left. And then he came and he told me, what did you leave? I said, I knocked 3 times, and the Prophet ﷺ said that if you knock 3 times, you should leave. And he said, if you did not give me somebody else to testify that this hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, you are going to be punished. That's why the early Muslim would not accept a hadith until at least 2 people have heard it from the Prophet ﷺ. When it has any type of legalities, if something moral or something is not an issue, but if something has like a ruling in it, you have to get more than. And why? Why do you think they put the two that has to have 2? Because if you borrow money, what do you get? You have to get 2 at least. If I borrow money, you have to get 2 witnesses. Am I going to accept an essential part of my religion without having 2 witnesses that the Prophet ﷺ said it? They do that. And some people go to 5. They said 5 because, even if you accuse somebody of something, you have 5 adultery, you have 5 witnesses. And somebody go, and this is what they call it hadith al-mutawatir. And the hadith, what they call it, that have 2 people that heard it in every channel, every level of, narrators. That's called Aziz, Hadith Aziz. Now, after we do this, so now we talked about protecting the chastity and protecting the honor of people, protecting the house. Now we're looking at protecting the individual owner now by something else. And here is the surah moves in to talk about now the way people look at women and men look at each other. الverses, I'm picking the one about talking the women, but the verses started with that the men should also lower their gaze when you look to women, you know. وقل للمؤمنات يغضضن من أبصارهن ويحفظن فروجهن ولا يبدين زينتهن إلا ما ظهر منها ولا يضربن بخمرهن على جيوبهن. And I took this verse because it is essential for even how woman can dress. The verse said, obviously started, I said, with the men should lower their gaze. You know, here also that the women, believing women should lower their gaze and guard their private parts. Men should do the same. But the part that comes in, وَلَا يُبْدِونَ زِينَتهن إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا وَلَا يَضْرِبْنَ بِخُمُرِهِنَّ عَلَى جِيوبِهِنَّ. Khumar is cover the head, and the jib is the neck. And the Arabs used to, you know, cover the free women used to cover the hair as a normal practice. The slave women should not cover their hair. And they used to leave their chest open. So the verse coming said, no, cover your chest. But the verse that comes in, and this is actually probably the only verse in the Quran that decide the women there is, you know, وَلَا يُبْدِينَ زِينَتَهُنَّ إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ مِنْهَا. And don't display that adornment except what is apparent. How you define it? How you define what's apparent? إِلَّا مَا ظَهَرَ, what shows up. Don't show their adornment except what shows up, what appears. So the verse is missing something. Allah didn't miss it. But we are the one who assume missing it because we start adding another one. We have to add another statement here. So comes in what is apparent due to necessity. So somebody added, he said, you know, they should not show any of their adornment except what is apparent due to necessity. And somebody else come and say, what is apparent due to need? And the third one, he said, apparent due to custom. Every one of them has implication. Because if a woman wants to show, you know, for example, she put whatever, the henna or something in her hand, she wear, you know, in her hands, you know, probably gold or silver or something. And you know, is that, should she show her hand? You know, should she show her face and the beauty in her face? Beauty. She should wear, you know, her rings or her bracelets. What's apparent this means? And that's why, but if you come and say, what is necessity? You said, oh, what is necessity that she have to show something that she will see with, and therefore her eye. And if she can put a kohl in her eye, you know, that's a beauty too. And then they come and say everything should cover except the eye. The other people said, what is in need? That means that she have to go buy and sell and go to the bank and so on. He said, no, therefore she has to have her hands open and her face is open. That people have to do it. And some people say what is customs in it. So when the scholar get confronted with this, they want to look at the application of a hadith. Say how the Prophet ﷺ defined it. And there is one hadith that says the Prophet ﷺ went to his house, and Asma is the daughter of is not the sister of Sayyidah Aisha. She was dressed in a light clothing, and the Prophet ﷺ told her when the women, you know, barely reach a maturity age, you know, then she should not show up anything from her except the face and the hair. Okay, and they use this hadith now. That's a common one that all of you probably have heard of it. But the sad part about it, this hadith actually is not a proof. Why? Because it's narrated only, actually it's not Bukhari and Muslim or Tirmidhi or anything. It's narrated by Sunan Abu Dawood. And Abu Dawood said that it's mursal. Mursal means that, you know, that person who narrated, which Khalid ibn Udrayk, who narrated that hadith, he never saw Sayyidah Aisha. So he's related to Sayyidah Aisha and he was not there. So how did you get the hadith? And then even, one of the scholars who was Ibn Qattan said that even Ibn Duriq, actually, his authenticity is doubtful. Anyway, we just don't know the reliability of it. So even with this hadith, there is still issue with it. So I'm leaving it to you, because people sometimes there's a lot of complaints about what is it.
So regarding this clothing, or there are some other hadiths which mention similar.
No, there is no other. Well, this, remember also something, because remember there is one according to what? What's the last one? Customs. So the customs, obviously, of Arabia, there was going to be different than the custom in Egypt, customs in Pakistan, customs and so on. So that's the issue that we'll have. But the important part is the decency of the dress. It is the protection of the woman in the way to dress. But we are not talking about, because we're talking about the major emphasis in what you should cover. Unfortunately now, it's actually all messed up, because the focus became on in the cover of the head. So you find girls who are covering the head and wearing a very tight clothing. That's a beauty, because you're showing your parts of your body, which is attractive. But the hair is the least attractive, particularly, if your hair is not good, looks too good. So it's one of these things that has been, but it's anyway, and therefore I think every country has probably to adopt something that protected the women from look decent, and there's not this, basically exposing, because when you said don't to expose, you're basically adornment. Adornment is a body is adornment. So don't to protect it, and everybody know how to protect his body too. Even a man should also protect. Don't walk in with a shorter, with a sleeve and have big muscles and walking, making like, I don't know, it's like you look like. But anyway, what are you doing? You're showing your beauty too. It's an issue. Remember, the whole surah coming in this morality is the protection of the society, the purification, the enlightenment of the society. So don't make things that looks, we don't need ruling sometime, because we know that this is not proper, to do it. Yes, sir. Yes. Well, that's what I told you. That's what I said. That's what the scholar have done. It have added these three. They have to add some qualification, and that's what they have it. And therefore, you find a different school of fiqh. It's difference because of what they added. But anyway, if you look, actually, let's just go back to this one for a minute. If you look at it all, we have four school of fiqh. We have Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmed. The three of them say that the face and hands, okay? And Imam Ahmed, he has multiple opinion about what it is. One of them that you cover everything except the eye. And the other opinion says it's also face and hand. Because Imam Ahmed has multiple opinion on almost in every issue. So now you look at it. So there's people take one opinion. If you take that everybody has two, then seven basically say face and hand, and one says, cover everything except the eye. So why should you want to take 1 7 and leave the 6 7s? It's up to you. But it's one of these things. It's the important part. It should be the end of the day. Everybody knew when you look at a girl dressed, is she dressed decently or not. It doesn't require a detailed explanation. Just as a joke, also not a joke actually. We have in our company, we have a CEO who is originally Greek. And he always come well dressed. He's graduated from the Sorbonne and the Harvard and so on. And the executive vice president was Texan, and convinced him that let us make Friday as a casual day. No, not this. So they said they was going. This is I'm hearing from our senior executive personally. He said that we were walking for lunch, and suddenly that CEO saw a girl wearing one of these, very tight and shiny things that you do it sometime for the gym. And he said, two executives was walking with him and said, we looked at each other. I said, my goodness, now we'll see what he's going to do something here. And then walked a little bit and saw one wearing jeans that's all torn, has holes in it and so on. So he said he didn't say anything, but he went and wrote a letter to the whole company and say, men have to have jacket and tie, and women should dress accordingly. So I said, wait a minute, your problem was with the girls how to dress. You couldn't describe what is the business attire for the women, and just impose it in the men, which obviously get a lot of people upset with this one. So it is an issue, actually, it's an issue about what is the proper dress for women. And for men, yeah, it's easy to describe. Now we move to the surah, which is the central surah of the verse in Surah An-Nur. Allahu nuru as-samawati wal-ard. مثل نوره كمشكاة فيها مصباح. All of you picked this verse. والمصباح في زجاج. So you all have know this verse clear. Allah is the light of the heaven and the earth. And Allah gave a parable, give an example for us. The light is that of the niche. The niches are just a hole in the wall, And in a niche there is a lamp, and the lamp has glass, and the glass is shining a star, and then has a bliss. The lamp has an oil in it, and the oil itself is also, not from the east, from the west, but the oil is glowing. And then you have, so basically light over light, from everything is light in this world. So it here comes in and describes something, but we have then to look at this. What is this? Allah subhanahu gave us the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the light of the heaven and the earth, and he gave us this example about that niche that has light over light over light in it. To understand this, you have to continue to see immediately after Allah subhanahu في بيوت أذن الله أن ترفع ويذكر فيها اسمه يسبح له بالغدو والآصال. So Allah, this parable of Allah's light, light upon light upon light, is where? In the houses where Allah permitted his name to be raised. And يسبح له فيها, and then in it there is Hajj purification is always announced in the morning and the evening. So that parable of the light direct us to where? To the masjid, to the houses of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then Allah continued and said, is this house, is that light over light over light in the masjid? Well, how is the light is going to be spread around the whole society, the whole world? رجال لا تلهيهم تجارة ولا بيع عن ذكر الله وإقام الصلاة وإيتاء الزكاة يخافون يوما تقلب فيه الأبصار القلوب والأبصار. So directly Allah subhanahu in this place, in the houses, when Allah put light over light over light, there is men that they are not get distracted by any commerce, any materialistic things or commerce, and they distract them. Not distract them from commerce per se, no, distracted from commerce. The distract commerce does not distract them from the remembrance of Allah. So yes, they could be engaged in a lot of commerce, but the remembrance of Allah always, they are not, they never distracted from it. Their business does not distract them from remembrance of Allah. How is that you get distracted? Because you act against Allah commanded, then you're distracted, from the remembrance of Allah at that point. You're keen of getting a profit, overrides all of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they remember Allah, they pray, they iqam as-salah wa ita'i zakah, yakhafuna yawman tataqallabu min al-absar. And they basically establish the prayer, they don't never forget the prayer, they give the zakah, and they fear the day when their eyes will be overturned in the horror of the day of judgment, obviously. So here is the ayah actually talk about where is the light will be emitted. The light will be emitted by the people who attended the masjid, that is their attributes, and they will bring the light outside the masjid. The masjid is the niche, and then the rest of it, the light will be transmitted, not by its own, not the building will emit the light, but the light comes in with the people who comes in. So it basically, if you think about it, if you take the lamp and the niche and so on, the niche is the masjid, the lamp is the revelation. Let me see if I put it in. Maybe I did. So I said, okay, the lamp is the niche is the masjid, and then the revelation is the lamp, and the intellect, the intellect absorbed this, the light, the purified soul, which is the way the oil and the water get, transmitted, the crystal of the light, it is the purified soul of the people in it. And the masjid focuses in that project to the society. So anyway, I wanted to think about it in this way, in a way, because how do you take it in without tying it to all of the other verses? That means, and this is an interesting one. What is the name of the university in Arabic? Jamia. What's the name of a mosque in Arabic? Jamia. Jamia. That's why the Jamia was a university. In fact, if you go to Al-Hamra, they tell you this was Jamia and Jamia. If you go to get one of these tour guides, and the non-Muslim, they go to the masjid there and said, this is Jamia and Jamia. And therefore they have the column, chairs. There's columns in the chairs, like a chair professor. It came in because there was a professor sitting. Somebody teach you physics, somebody teach you mathematics, somebody teach you religion, and so on. They were sitting there. So the masjid was this. And the masjid was where the Prophet ﷺ have all, when he see the dignitaries, when he rules. The masjid was the place when everything was done. It basically was a governance, a place of governance. Now we make our masjid here what? For prayers, and we build all of these monuments for basically Friday prayer. So what we really will probably have to look at it and what's intended. That's why, in the masjid, it should be tied actually. And this is something that's interesting. Look at this, us, even here. The masjid is supposed to be the place when you emit the knowledge, you emit the light to everybody. Where is we teach the kids? In the trailers. Is the priority that we have? Do we build something to make a gym? This is the role of the masjid. Let's suppose if you take this ayah about it, this is the masjid supposed to develop men and women who can bring light to the whole society. It's not to play basketball or do this. Or just to come to Friday prayer only. I think we need, as a community, have really a setup also of a strategy or a plan. What is really the role of the masjid? Because we can pray any place. But the role of the masjid is it's a community activities for everything. So.
Why they call Masjid al-Nabawi? Masjid is you find a Bible called Jamia al-Nabawi.
Well, the masjid because a place of sujood, that you prostrate, and maybe that's what, because to bring the humility, but it's supposed to be the group, to come to it, Now, if you do this, if you achieve all of these morals that, from protecting the chastity, protecting the honor, protecting the family, the houses, the privacy of the houses, establishing, the masjid as the place when you emit everything, then Allah give a promise then. After he listed all of these, then Allah say, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمَلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَيَسْتَخْلِفَنَّهُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ كَمَا اسْتَخْلَفَ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. Then Allah comes, it is divine, really a promise. But this divine, there is no promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran without conditions. So if we do not fulfill, the promise is not fulfilled with us, that means we're missing the conditions. So here is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He said, the promise that those who believe and do righteous deed, he will surely grant them succession on the land. He will make them an owner, a leader of the land. He will become, basically the one who inherit the land. كما استخلف الذين من قبلهم, as he did it before. وليمكن لهم دينهم, and then he is going to establish for them the religion. They're scared to practice it. No. الذي ارتضى لهم دينهم الذي ارتضى لهم ولا يبدلنهم من بعد خوفهم أمنا. And then he will replace, they remove their fear and they give them the sense of security. يعبدونني لا يشركون بي شيئا. Worship me and don't associate anything. Associate me. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, whoever do kufr, whoever reject this one, then those are the rebellious, the disobedience. وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَأَطِيعُوا اللَّهَ لَعَلَّكُمْ تُرْحَمُونَ. So if we look at this, you notice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala started that there is condition for this. There is what the promise that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is succession and leadership on the earth. There is empowerment of your religion. There is also security that replaces any fear that you have. Allah make a promise to this. If you achieve this, then Allah comes a condition and said, okay, you must have a true belief. You must do right action. You must never associate anything with Allah. And we talked about this shirk sometimes, because shirk, people think that worship idol or so on. No, shirk, there's so many manifestations of it, and we discussed it before about the hidden shirk and smaller shirk and so on. We don't talk about, I think, Prophet Yusuf Surah. And establish the prayer, pay the zakah, and obey the Prophet, the messenger, and the message in that regard. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, these are the people, but if you deviate from this one, then you are disobedient. Don't expect that this promises will come to you. So if you look, to this one from Surah An-Nur, it starts with, moral discipline actually in it. And then this moral discipline has to get from a place to project it to illuminate the whole society that comes to it. And if you do this, then you get all of the promises of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the empowerment of it. But this surah is very actually important in that regard. Actually, all of the surahs are important. But this from the point of light, to basically move us from the darkness to the light. The last verse which I picked up, which is this surah, about that people always, and I think we discussed it before also, that people reject, how can a prophet comes to us, just a normal man who walks, he's not wealthy man, he is not very powerful physically and so on. When he just comes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالُوا مَا لِهَذَا الرَّسُولِ يَأْكُلُ الطَّعَامَ وَيَمْشِي فِي الْأَسْوَاقِ. Why this messenger coming to eat food and walk in the store and have to buy food from the store? Why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala أنزل إليه ملك? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he didn't send basically an angel with him, as to basically protect him and warn people against him. فيكون معه نذيرا, to warn them, supported now by an angel, by outside, forces. أو يلقى إليه كنز, or he becomes so wealthy that will have basically a treasure comes to him. أو تكون له جنة يأكل منها. And why have to go to the store? Why he doesn't have big farms and other things, gardens, and that he can eat from it, doesn't have to go outside and mix with the people in the stores. وقال الظالمون إن تتبعون رجلا مسحورا, and the wrongdoer will say, oh, you're just following a man who's under a spell, who claim he is, but look at this, he ate and go to the store, the market and so on, like everybody else. So the excuse is always with this, and frankly, if you think about it, if you are living in a community and then suddenly comes one person, normal person, maybe he's an honest person, and say, I'm receiving a message from Allah, and now you have to follow me. But most people will be hesitant. But if you get a king, or something, and he said, I'm getting guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, people will listen to. If you get a big sheikh, has a lot of followers, he probably will say, and we have some of them do this. So it is a little bit tougher. But at the end of the day, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always emphasizes that, no, these are normal people that I have selected, that they will eat. So don't think that you have to elevate them to a divinity position, even if you accept them. But be sure that you're rejecting them on the truth, not rejecting them because they're coming to warn you about the day of judgment. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always said, the people who rejected the messenger I sent, They reject it because they deny the hereafter. They are not looking for benefit for their own, but they warn the people of this where Allah subhanahu بل كذبوا بالساعة وأعتدنا لمن كذب بالساعة. And the reason why they make all of these excuses, why he's not very wealthy, why he go to the market, why he does this, why Allah didn't send an angel with him to support him, why he doesn't have basically a big fortune. And they said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, no, they deny the hour. And we have prepared a blazing fire for those who deny the hour. So that is the reason why they rejecting it, not because they rejected the message. They want the excuse to reject the message by attacking the messenger. But in reality, they are. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه. اللهم اهدنا فيمن هديت وعافنا فيمن عافيت وتولنا فيمن توليت وبارك اللهم لنا فيما أعطيت وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت فإنك يا ربنا تقضي بالحق ولا يقضى عليك. اللهم ادخلنا برحمتك في عبادك الصالحين. اللهم اخرجنا من ظلمات الجهل والوهم إلى نور العلم. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما. اللهم اجعلنا ممن يستمعون القول فيتبعون أحسنه. اللهم اكفنا بحلالك عن حرامك وبطاعتك عن معصيتك وبفضلك عمن سواك. اللهم بفضلك ورحمتك أعلي كلمة الحق والدين. اللهم انصر الإسلام وعز المسلمين يا أكرم الأكرمين. Oh Allah, spread your mercy upon us. Shower us with your blessings. Increase our knowledge, grant us forgiveness, and reward us with the company of the prophets in the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, purify our hearts, strengthen our faith, increase our knowledge, and make us benefit from what you have taught us. Oh Allah, forgive our parents and all our friends and relatives who have passed away. Oh Allah, make their graves garden from heaven and grant them the Firdaus al-A'la. Oh Allah, we have many of our friends and relatives who are sick. Oh Allah, grant to all of them full and speedy recovery. Oh Allah, guide our children, protect them, and make them righteous. Oh Allah, grant us the power and the ability that we may be grateful for the favors you have bestowed upon us and our parent, and that we may do righteous deeds that are pleasing to you. Oh Allah, we seek from you all of the good, whether we know it or we don't. And we seek your refuge from all evil, whether we know it or we don't. Oh Allah, we seek refuge in you from incapacity, from laziness, from fear, from greed, from poverty, and from the torment of the grave. Oh Allah, we have many of our brethren who are living under oppression and injustice. Oh Allah, heal their trauma, protect their helpless, and grant them lasting peace and prosperities. Oh Allah, we ask with every name you have elected for yourself, that none of us leave this gathering, but his pains have been relieved, his worries have been removed, his debts have been paid, his weaknesses have been concealed, his sins have been forgiven, and his needs have been fulfilled. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. سبحان الله وبحمده عدد خلقه ورضا نفسه وزنة عرشه ومداد كلماته. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير المرسلين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.